Right.
All right, guys, welcome. Sam and Chris here with the Crimson Creed podcast. Uh, we're on the eve, Chris, of OU game day.
I'm really
You know, we
excited about it.
yeah, yeah, we kick things off tomorrow. The UTEP miners coming to Norman. Apologies in advance to UTEP. Not personal. It's just what's gotta happen.
8 months of
Definitely
pent-up
looking forward.
aggression.
Yes, yes. Definitely looking forward to seeing the group out there. Without getting too far ahead of ourselves on the game, taking a moment to appreciate Brent Venables, the the stuff he's been able to do on the recruiting trail. Had a lot of shifting, obviously, at the administrative level with our coaches and such, but he seems to have overcome that. And right now, our 2023 class is looking better and better every day, pulling in some guys for 2024 as well. Um, so, want to get your thoughts real quick on that 23 recruiting class, how it's looking. I know we've had a lot of wins recently. What you're seeing?
What I've been seeing is while he's putting a focus on the defense, he is not neglecting the offense. Even when it comes to like the defensive coaches like Jay Valai, who came here from Alabama, that receiver who just committed to us, Anthony Evans, he said it was Jay Valai who talked him out of going to Oregon, not Oregon, to Georgia. He's the one that talked him about going to Georgia. And that kid, I've seen some highlights of his. He can fly, but we're in the running for the number one defensive line recruit in David Hicks, the Elite 11 MVP. Jackson Arnold is committed to us, and he's really recruiting hard for us. We have
4 stars, nearly 5 here.
he is a
Got
5-star.
stars. Yeah, earned his 5th star recently.
And there's that kid they call PJ. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, but he earned his 5th star recently. There's Makari Vickers. There's Derek LeBlanc. There's all these guys who have committed to us. And then there's the running back, Khalib Hicks, the wide receiver, Anthony Evans, and Jaquez Petaway. I mean, he's really looking for the diamonds in the rough and the ones who are shining bright. And he's doing a phenomenal job of bringing them to Norman.
Absolutely. Gotta love, obviously, Jackson Arnold and PJ. I think the favorite thing for me at this point is the quality of the defensive recruits we're getting in. Thinking back to the last couple playoffs we were in, facing off against Georgia, facing off against LSU, you get up there and, when that D line comes out against the opponent's offensive line, and the offensive line looks like a bunch of Goliaths up against a bunch of little Davids on OU's defensive line. You kind of see what's going to happen there. But starting to get some real quality built guys in here. We've got the edge rusher, Derek LeBlanc, you mentioned 6'4", 270. Colton Bassett going to be a huge addition for us in that class, sitting at like 6'6", 225. A lot of body there, but probably a lot of speed too at that, at that build. And a lot of other quality guys. Even the 3-star Philip Pisciotti out of IMG Academy. I mean, linebacker sitting at 6'3", 225, versatile position. He obviously there's going to be him. There's going to be Ethan Downs. There's going to be some of these other guys. Danny Stutzman, that are going to get to be the focus of Brent Venables throughout his tenure here. Him coming in with the linebacker expertise. So it's definitely going to be exciting to see. Right now we're sitting pretty right now with the 5th overall class. Texas sitting up there at number 2. What are your thoughts on Texas? Do we put much stock in their 2nd ranked recruiting class right now for 2023?
If it were any other coaching staff, if it were any other school, I'd say they're getting prepared for a national championship. Because if you look at their class versus our class, there's almost no difference. And Texas, they've been making fun of our recruits, but get this. OU and Texas both have 22 recruits. The average recruit for Texas on 24/7 Sports has a grade of 92.2. The average recruit for us has a grade of 92.18. They have a total of 286.53 recruiting points on 24/7. We have 284.84. I mean, the classes are nearly identical. The only thing that's different is they have 3 5 stars, we have 2. But
Mhm.
if you look at Steve Sarkisian, who's never had a 10-win year as a head coach, he's always been at 9 and below. Last year, he went 5-7. And honestly, if you gave, as much as we don't like to talk about him, if you gave Lincoln Riley that class, if you gave Kirby Smart that class, if you gave Nick Saban that team, they would have made it to the playoffs. So there's just so much inconsistency there that I don't put too much stock in it yet. Now they could end up, this could finally end up being the one where Texas is back, but they haven't done anything to prove it over the last decade. So they're sitting at number 2 for now, but I wonder how many of those players are going to stay with them.
Do we like their chances against Alabama?
Oh, no. Nick Saban, he's one of my favorite coaches in the world because he never overlooks an opponent. I was listening to one of his press conferences earlier today about the Utah State game, and he was talking about their ability to create negative plays, how they were one of the best teams in the year last year at creating tackles for a loss. I mean, no matter who the opponent is, he prepares for it like it's the national championship. You get a coach who prepares for every game like it's the national championship, a coach who has, I think if I remember correctly, 14 5 stars on his team, has Will Anderson and Henry To'oTo'o on the defense and Bryce Young on the offense. That I honestly think that we're going to be seeing the marching band take the snaps in the fourth quarter.
Hey, it could be happening. I don't rule anything out in college football these days. That coming on the heels of the big news of the day, obviously, the College Football Playoff Committee voting to expand to 12 teams by 2026, further putting it in the hands of the conference commissioners, though, to potentially have it as soon as the 2024 season. What are your thoughts on this? When I look at it at first, I think there's an argument to be made for some, making it exclusive. I know some people like the 14 format. Some didn't want to expand beyond 8. But you think about for the fans, for the viewers, for the networks, the quality of the games you're going to get and how many of them we're going to be able to get with 12 games, some of these being hosted games. Thinking about OU, thinking about Alabama, playoff team where, they're a conference champion and they'll get to host a lower seed in a postseason game at the home stadium, an environment we've not gotten to see before. This just jumps out to me as a huge win for the sport, a huge win for the fans, and even bigger opportunity for the players to put themselves on the biggest stage at an earlier time than they might ordinarily get to do with the NFL.
Before I give my thoughts, I want some clarification because I saw the 2024 thing. Is that saying the 2024 season or the 2024 playoff?
Season.
Okay, gotcha.
Because there's no logistical way that's ready by next football season.
Yeah, I get you. A man can hope. But do you know that last week when Austin Peay was playing Western Carolina, I was sitting there amazed at the Western Carolina player Dawood Davis, their wide receiver. I only know who that is because we went over 200 days without college football, and I was so desperate to watch college football that I was like, you know what? Let's turn on Western Kentucky and Austin Peay. And they have good players out there. Dawood Davis, he's a pretty darn good receiver. But I know that because we went so long without college football. I am never going to complain about more college football. And at the end of the day, just like the NCAA basketball tournament, we're probably going to see the same 4 teams make it to the end as we would if we had never expanded the playoffs. We'll probably see the same 2 teams make it to the national championship, but you can never guarantee it. Because North Carolina, if you look at this past basketball season, North Carolina was expected to maybe get past the first round. Getting past the second round was highly unlikely. They had Kansas on the ropes in the national championship, nearly beat them. I mean, it was a phenomenal game. They had an amazing postseason. You can never count out those teams. And of course, the tournament's been going on for hundreds of years, and only once has this happened, but it still happened that a 16 seed beats a 1 seed. Who was it that beat Virginia a few years ago?
That was University of Maryland at Baltimore County.
That, that that's
UMBC.
that's that's exactly my point because if look at this past football season, you put Alabama up against Texas A&M, Alabama is going to win that game about 90, 95 times out of 100. But the outcome that happened that day was the 5 or 10 times that Texas A&M wins. And you never know whenever an Alabama or a Georgia or an Ohio State goes to the playoff, you never know when they are going to be having a bad day where they could go up against Cincinnati, they could go up against Pittsburgh, they could go up against Oklahoma or Baylor and normally just whoop them 6 ways to Sunday. But because they're having a horrible day and the other team's having a great day, they don't even make it past the first round. So a 12-team playoff, I'm okay with that. When it comes to more football, I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we see the benefit of some of the playing time, the experience you can get, maybe even bleed through into the next season. If we, reflecting on Oklahoma State and Central Michigan from yesterday, this game started out close. We get into a 7-7 tie, and Central Michigan gives up a safety. And that kind of turned the tide of the whole game at that point. Oklahoma State goes up, 44-10 at halftime, if I'm not mistaken. 44-15 maybe. So
Yeah, 44
it's
to 15.
crazy. And the most experienced person on that field, Spencer Sanders, throwing over 20 yards per completion in that ballgame, 28-41, 406 for 4 touchdowns. Just crazy. And as an Oklahoma fan, looking at the rest of our season and the potential for next season, not sure obviously if there's going to be a next season in the Big 12, but looking ahead to this year and seeing Oklahoma State, my initial thoughts on this one: Oklahoma State lacks depth defensively. We have them take this huge lead. They go into the fourth quarter. They're up, 51-22 at this point. They get outscored in that fourth quarter, 22-7. Okay, they end up letting Central Michigan within 14 points of that. There is there's something to be said for garbage time points, right? Not all the starters are in, and you're bound to give up maybe a point here or there. Giving up 29 second half points really speaks ill of the depth that OSU has. Going into a game with an opponent that's got the potential to be fast, like Oklahoma, someone who's maybe got toughness and the ability to run on you a bit, like Kansas State. Looking at these opponents and seeing what's in front of them, I question whether or not that defensive unit that propped up Oklahoma State all of last year, if they have the same resilience, if they have the same backbone that they had last year because of the lack of depth.
I was kind of making a similar observation, and like you said, there is something to be said for the garbage time points. But when you look at the final score of that game, it was a 14-point game at the end. There was some atrocious play calling in the early first half by Central Michigan. They were averaging like 7 yards of play when suddenly they got held up 4th and 3 at the Oklahoma State 33-yard line. If they had gone for that, they would have easily gotten the first down. They would have gone down and taken the lead. I mean, they were going to begin controlling that game offensively, and Oklahoma State would have had to keep up, which their offense showed that they could have. But if Central Michigan had just called plays a little bit smarter, this would have been a much better game. That safety, it killed their momentum. That missed field goal, it killed their momentum. But when it comes to a team, look at Alabama versus Notre Dame in the 2020 season. Alabama had dominated Notre Dame the whole game, and then on Notre Dame's last drive of the game, they go down and get a touchdown, and Nick Saban is fuming. They gave up 7 points in the second half, and Nick Saban was fuming about it. If that is enough to make a championship caliber coach mad, how do you think he would feel about giving up 29 points in the second half, allowing a pretty sizable comeback to where Oklahoma State got lucky at the end? And I've been looking at their team, I've been looking at our team, and tomorrow will give us a much better idea of what we have going on with our team. But if we can show up with a good defense against Oklahoma State, if we can show up with the defense like we had against them in 2020 when we shut them out in the second half, only allowed one touchdown the whole game,
Mhm.
that we're going to destroy them if that's the case because we have the offense to do it. We have Dylan Gabriel, who's a proven playmaker, who's a phenomenally accurate quarterback. We have Eric Gray, who's really going to be coming in this season. We have Marvin Mims, Theo Weiss, Braden Willis, Daniel Parker, a great offensive line. Our offense is going to be there. But if our defense can show up against Spencer Sanders, who had a phenomenal game yesterday, and the rest of that fast-paced Oklahoma State offense, then I honestly think we're going to do great against them. But Oklahoma State, they showed both sides of them yesterday. They showed both sides of themselves because they showed the defense in the first half that we saw last year. They shut them down a lot, but then they lost it. What made that defense so good for them last year was the second half was their half. Against Oklahoma, they gave up, let's see here, they gave up, 25 points in the first half, 24 points in the first half. And then the second half, they gave up 9 points. Against Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl, they were losing by 21. They came all the way back because the defense shut them down. Against Baylor in the Big 12 championship, they shut Baylor out completely in the Big 12 championship, just weren't able to convert on 4th and goal to win the game. What made their defense so good last year was they were even stronger in the first half than they were in the second half than they were in the first half. And if they've lost that, then they are in for a rude awakening this season.
No, for sure, for sure. And looking to OU and UTEP tomorrow, you talk about the importance of the defense, and I think this is a good spot to really highlight some of UTEP's strengths. So, looking at their offensive side, player I'm going to be watching on that offense is Tyron Smith. He's the sophomore wide receiver there. Last year, plays in 12 games, 33 receptions, little under 600 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Okay, averages 17 yards per reception last year. That is pretty good, right? Pretty good for a player his in that league, his skill level. Fast forward to this year, in one game, he has 20% roughly of the yards and the receptions that he had across 12 games last year. But basically, he's on track right now to do in 5 games what it took him 12 to do last year.
Mhm.
Coming off the first game, 18 yards of reception, 127 yards. He caught 1 touchdown. Phenomenal start to it. And that's something you really love to see going into this one if you are UTEP. On the defensive side of that, Jalen Redmond and Key Lawrence for OU. Kind of focusing on 2 of these guys here, both very solid, and I think these are the 2 that have the most potential for improvement in the Venables system. Redmond coming in as the D lineman, 6'3", nearly 300 pounds. Do you want 6'3", 300 coming at you if you're one of these offensive linemen? If you are, UTEP's quarterback here, 3,000 yards last year, you're coming into this one facing a guy 6'3", 300 pounds. I don't want that. But Redmond on that D line, he's got a lot of opportunity and a lot of experience that he brings. And that experience really is going to be invaluable this year with the experience of Brent Venables, of Jalen Redmond, and so many of our other, so many more of our players there. And Key Lawrence, who I just hinted at, 6'1", 204, junior coming into this year. He is another one with the potential probably to be the most improved secondary member on our team. Someone who I think was able to shepherd and learn a lot from Woody Washington. See kind of what goes on. We bring him in and he is able to make an impact. Last year, getting 47 tackles, even forcing a few fumbles. Couldn't get any interceptions when it was all said and done last year, but sometimes it's about the plays you make, and doesn't always mean you're going to get an interception. But he made some good quality plays last year. So those are kind of the guys that I'm watching from both sides of it. What do you see on UTEP's defense?
You know, one of their defensive players, he ended up being one of their stars a couple last week. It's going to be Tyrese Knight. He's a linebacker for them. He's 6'1", 235, which is he's a big boy. And you know, he's had a phenomenal career. He's a senior. This is only his third season actually taking snaps, but or not taking snaps, but playing on downs. But let's take a look at his career. In 2020, he had 54 total tackles, 26 solo, 28 assists. Flash forward 1 year to 2021, he has 101 tackles. 58 of those were solo, and 43 of those were assists. Then come up to today. He's played one game in which he has 11 tackles for 7 total, 4 assists. He's improving at a rate to where we could very easily see this guy in the NFL. I mean, he's really doing well. He even had an interception last year and forced a couple fumbles. He deflected a few passes last year. And then in just one game, a game that they lost even, he had 11 tackles, 7 solo. That is a linebacker who is flying up and down the field. That is a linebacker who is trying to stuff the run. That is a linebacker who's going to sit back in zone and do his best to just attack you. He also had a couple sacks last year, meaning he's going to be sprinting at our offensive line from time to time. I'm kind of picturing him as like a Kenneth Murray type linebacker, because this is someone who's going all over the field. And when it comes to being able to counter that, something that our offense is hopefully going to do well is that speed that Jeff Levy is bringing in. He's a very fast-paced guy. Move down the field, go, 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 fly, fly, fly. And you know, when it comes to countering that linebacker, one of the best ways to fight big boys is with big boys. So I have a starter who I believe is going to be phenomenal for us. And then I also have a backup who I think is one of the most underutilized players on our team. There's, like, you had 2 players for OU, I do as well. Braden Willis at tight end. He was just horribly underused last year. He's a great blocking tight end.
Me some Braden Willis.
He is just phenomenal after the catch. I was talking with my girlfriend Hannah a while back, and she asked me something about what makes him good, and I showed her a couple of his clips. Something that you notice about him is he has the leg strength of a rhinoceros. I mean, whenever he's met, he never goes backwards. Whenever he's stoned, whenever he stops, he knows he can't run anymore. He always finds a way to fall forward. I remember in the Big 12 championship in 2020 against Iowa State, there was one second down where he was met like a yard behind the line and had 3 defenders pushing him, and he still found a way to fall forward to get that first down. I mean, he's just a phenomenal tight end, and it really bothered me how underutilized he was last year. But one other person,
on that, real quick,
yeah.
Hearing Mark Andrews' comments about Lincoln Riley and USC, you know, he doesn't pay attention to them. Do you think this is a chronic Lincoln Riley issue? You know, we would say our defense last year, underutilizing your best players.
You know, I'm going to direct your attention to the transfer portal to that and let you answer. We had the number 1 receiver in his class on 24/7. I think he's the number 4 recruit OU has ever had since they started grading it, Jaden Hazelwood. He got maybe 5 or 6 catches in 2019, his freshman year. He was injured all of 2020. And then this year he was used pretty nicely, but it was the same route over and over again. Defenses eventually figured him out. And so he ended up transferring out. Austin Stogner, who showed what he could be in 2019 and then again in 2020, I don't even think he had 10 catches on the year. I mean, they did not draw up plays to go to Austin Stogner. And then look at some of the people who went to the transfer portal, like Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon, as a true freshman in 2017, barreled over Georgia's defense. Georgia allowed on average like 50 rushing yards per game that season. I think Rodney Anderson had an incredible performance in that game, but Trey Sermon too. I think Trey Sermon was close to like 70 or 80 yards, and he was the backup. And we saw what he did at Ohio State. We we constantly see these guys who are just so good. They wouldn't get utilized at OU, and we thought, oh, maybe they were a bust. Maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. And then we see him go to another team and we think, holy cow, why didn't we do this? And, I think that really is just a classic underutilization issue because Braden Willis is such a phenomenal player. And Lincoln Riley wouldn't do anything to get him the ball. He's a proven playmaker. He showed it with Jalen
Mhm.
Hurts. And anytime he's gotten the ball, he's proved it. But he was just underutilized. And one other player that hasn't been utilized like I think he should is Marcus Major. He's our backup running back this year. He finally made it to the second string part. Last year and this year, both years he averaged, or 2020 and 2021, both years he averaged 5 yards a carry or more. Now, of course, he didn't take very many snaps, but he was averaging 5 yards a carry. In 2020, he had
Mhm.
35 carries for 187 yards. His longest run being against Florida in the Cotton Bowl when he had a 46-yard touchdown run. Last year, he only carried the ball 15 times, went for 83 yards. Uh, that's a good game. Now, of course, he did that over
Absolutely.
2 games, Oregon and Texas Tech, but in both of those games, he averaged over 5 a carry. I mean, he is phenomenal after contact. Whenever he gets past the line, he loves barreling into linebackers, and usually it takes a couple of them to bring him down. Given that he's the backup and Jeff Lebby loves utilizing a dual running back system, I think we are going to see a lot of him tomorrow, and I think he is going to be really good.
Yes, sir. No doubt. Definitely want to get some Marcus Major in. Before we close out here, want to get your score prediction. I'll give you mine too here. I have OU covering the 30.5 point spread, winning by 42 points, margin of 52-10 in the season opener and head coach career opener for Brent Venables.
That's a good prediction. I really hope our defense has come that far. I'd love to see him hold them to just 10 points. I'm going to guess that UTEP is going to end up with 17 points, but I think OU will end up with either 59 or 63. I mean, we have the entire offense to do it, and I believe we now have a head coach and an offensive coordinator who do not like pressing the gas. I mean, we've seen what Jeff Lebby's offense could do at UCF
Pressing the
when
break.
they were. What was that?
Pressing the break, you mean?
Oh yeah, pressing the brake. I mean, yeah, Lincoln Riley, he loved pressing the brake whenever he had an 8 point lead. But Jeff Lebby at UCF, he was their offensive coordinator when they were declared the national champions. Then you look at Baylor when they had their great offense back in like 2015. Jeff Lebby was the offensive coordinator. You look at 2020 and 2021, whenever Ole Miss is dominating the SEC's defenses. I remember in 2020, Ole Miss almost put up 50 points on Alabama. Jeff Lebby was the offensive coordinator. He knows how to score that many points in a game, and Brent Venables knows how to stick it down their throat.
Absolutely. All right, Chris. Anything else you want to throw in here before we close this out for the night?
Nothing I can think of. I'm really hoping we get David Hicks, number one defensive lineman in his class, trending heavily towards OU. But before we go, I want to say that I am so excited for this year because there's a good chance we don't make it to the playoff. There's a good chance that we don't make it to the New Year's Six, but there's a good chance that we do, and we are going to see a new OU football team this year. We are going to see a team that utilizes its best playmakers, a team that gives uncommon effort every play, a team where it's never good enough until the scoreboard has a winning number and the clock says 0.
I love the optimism there. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to subscribe to our page here. Keep tuned in every Friday of the season. We will have a recap of the week's events as well as a look ahead. at the coming Saturday, even in a bye week. Tell me that's not good quality service there coming to you guys, even in the middle of a bye week. No bye weeks here. We are up and at 'em every week of the college football season. Please tune back in Crimson Creek podcast. I'm Sam Knight along with Chris Knight. We're your hosts. Happy Saturday. Happy college football 2022.
Boomer Sooner.